Thank you. Shabbat Shalom again. These have been rough days, really difficult, dark days. Figuratively, but of course, literally, it's getting darker, longer, every day. And if you're a Texan like me, that's really rough. No matter how long I've lived in this state, 22 years, I guess, at this point, still the hardest part, not the temperature, but the darkness. And in that respect, it's true that Chanukah always comes at the right time. But I feel that especially profoundly this year. As you likely know, Chanukah starts this coming Thursday night. So what's the primary mitzvah of Chanukah? It's a real question, not rhetorical. Lighting the Chanukah. Is that what you said? Oh, okay, well, you're jumping ahead. I need like 3 more pages till that part. So, lighting the Chanukah. That is the mitzvah of Chanukah. But the question now is why? Why are we taught to light the Chanukah? And this I'm going to answer for you just because you could say a lot of things, and I want to get to page 3. So, the reason we light the Chanukah is something called Pirsumei Nisa in Aramaic, or Pirsum Hanes in Hebrew, to publicize the miracle. You know that Hanukkah is about miracles, probably. So what miracle are we publicizing when we light the Chanukah? And this is a trick question because the answer, there are 2. So what's one of them? I think I heard Dave say it. The oil, right? The oil that lasted enough oil for a cruise of oil for 1 day, and it lasts 8, okay, and what's the other miracle? Yeah, Betty Haynesfurther, Jewish educator. The what? The fact that the Maccabees won, and why is that miraculous? Great, they were the significant underdogs, outnumbered expansively, not really like trained militarily, and nevertheless, they win. So let's talk about that military victory for a moment. What's that military victory really all about? If we come 35,000 feet up from it, I'd like to suggest that it's the idea that even when it looks hard, things can still turn out for the good. And what about the oil? Let's get 35,000 feet up from there. I'd like to suggest that that miracle is really about believing that the impossible can be possible. So let's look at a few of the details, though, about the lighting of Chanukiot and see what that tells us to make this Chanukah exactly the right holiday for this moment. So first, how do we light the Chanukah candles? Right, we light it with the shamash. How many candles do we start lighting? 1. And what do? We build up. Each night add 1. Some of you who've studied this Talmud text with me know the Hebrew for this is ma'alin bakodesh. In matters of holiness, we increase. We go up. We don't decrease. And the we is the Jews. And the lights being the symbol for these miracles, they come to tell us that we come to see the more we invest in an idea, building, increasing, the stronger that idea can become. There's something virtuous about the repetition and the building. Holiness grows, in other words, when we invest in it. But also consider who lights the Chanukiah. The Talmud tells us that the minimum is 1 person for the whole household, but the Mehadrin, the overachievers, as we might understand it, what's preferable there is that each person in the household lights their own Chanukiah. so that each person isn't just a witness or a passive observer, but actually each person in the household becomes a light bringer, a light catalyzer themselves. The facilitator of increasing the holiness, increasing the promise and the possibility. But the real power, I think, comes in the directionality of the mitzvah itself. Remember, it's not just for us. It's not just about us remembering these miracles. It's about publicizing them. Pirsame Nisa, publicizing the miracle. To whom? Everyone, the world, everyone else. And how do we make that manifest? Page 3. We're commanded to put the Chanukah outside our doorway itself, up in a window, facing the public street. And specifically, we're taught to light it during business hours, while the market is still open. It's not that you're forbidden to light after the market closes. If you don't get home until 11 p.m., sei gesund, you're still going to light. But our tradition wants us to make this a visible public act so that the public will see it. The lighting of the Chanukah for Pirsame Nisa is ancient Jewish social media. It is. And what messages does that PR campaign send out to the world? And think about it that way. I'm not trying to be funny. It is a PR campaign. It's actually about our Jewish priorities. That we believe that even when the odds are against us, that goodness will prevail. That the impossible can somehow be made possible, even if we can't explain it. These are powerful messages about Jewish faith, optimism, and pride. And it all comes not through imagery of destruction and despair, and it could have, by the way, if you think of the Hanukkah story. There was a marketing campaign to be done there about destruction and despair. But instead, the campaign is literally built around light shining through darkness, growing each and every night for a week and a day, as if to signify that the light will never go out. Now, you likely know that as holidays go, Hanukkah is considered a minor one. It's got nothing on Pesach or Rosh Hashanah. But interestingly, the rabbis of the Talmud give the mitzvah of lighting the Chanukah special status, elevating it above even the wine for Shabbat. They teach that if one only has enough money to afford wine for Kiddush or money for oil and wicks for Hanukkah, they should spend their money on the oil and the wicks, not the wine. Why? Because of the public nature of the miracle, that its purpose actually proves more important than even the sanctification of the Sabbath through the Kiddush. And that's a big choice to make. Now, as you may know, the Talmud teaches that in times of danger, we're not obligated to make the Chanukah public-facing. That knowingly putting oneself in existential danger overrides the value of Pirsame Nisa, publicizing the miracle. And of course, anyone who truly believes they are in nature because they are, is actually actively encouraged not to put the Chanukah out. The text reads, they can put it at the table, light it there, and that will suffice. But for those of us for whom this does not apply, I'd like to suggest that this year, perhaps more than any other, at least in my lifetime, is the year to put the Chanukiot in our windows. This year, perhaps more than any other, is the year for each person in our households to light our own Chanukiot each and every night of Hanukkah. Because the Chanukah and its lights serve not just to remind us of the miracles of the particular moment in time of the first Hanukkah, but rather they remind us of what the Hasmoneans were fighting for, what the temple was rededicated for. not to be a relic of history, something remembered from the past, but rather to enable Judaism to be practiced and to be alive, lived outwardly, publicly, at every time and in every place, and I would add even and especially in the face of darkness that can feel like it's deepening every day. Of the many concerns so many of our congregants have expressed over the last nearly 2 months, the question of what we, the Jewish community, can do to counter the increasing waves of anti-Semitism in our country and across our world is at the top. And in truth, my answer to that is not all that different from what I shared with you on Rosh Hashanah. We can and should speak out against anti-Semitism. We need to call it out when we see it. We need to demand that our work in our schools and our government ensure our safety, and we need to seek out legal recourse when they don't. We need to withhold our resources from organizations that promote anti-Semitic views or give shelter and support to people who do. We need to do our part to re-stigmatize it and ensure that it is unacceptable in the environments where we find ourselves in positions of power to squelch it. But, to quote Bret Stephens, anti-Semitism is not ultimately on the Jews to solve. If it can be solved at all, it is literally as old as time. The real question for us as Jews and Jewish families is how to thrive in the face of it. And the reason this is the question is because it is the ultimate answer to what we, Jews and those who love us, can do to ensure that the ultimate goal of anti-Semitism is never achieved. Proud, practicing Jews ensure a Judaism that is alive, well, thriving, regardless of whatever empty winds might otherwise hope to extinguish our flame. So this Chanukah, let those lights captivate you. Let them inspire you to commit to bring the holiness that they stand for each and every day. And know that when the 8th day of Chanukah has come and gone, when the smell of latkes dwindles away, it might take longer than 8 days, you'll be able to look at your life and see yourself not as a celebrator of Chanukah, but as a kindler and a bringer of light. I'm struck by the fact that Chanukah begins this year on the eve of December 7th. 2 months basically to the day since October 7th and the attack on Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of Sukkot. I'm not sure if you know, but the very first Chanukah that occurred when the Maccabees rededicated the temple after their miraculous military victory, and it was observed for 8 days, was not for it to originally become its own new holiday, but to essentially be an observance of the most recent Jewish holiday that the community had not been able to observe because they were forbidden to under the Seleucid rule and oppression. So what really was that first Chanukah? It was the rededication of our ancestors to active, proud, and public Jewish practice. Maybe that Chanukah can be that for each of us too this year. The catalyzer of the deepening of our Jewish identities, the strengthening of our Jewish pride, and our recommitment to our never diminished Jewish purpose, to serve as kindlers of light for our own people and for the world, no matter what. Shabbat Shalom.